Welcome to R&R Live and Life. We begin this episode after a very eventful night, having been woken by two semi-trailers driving past our window around 9:30, close enough that had I reached out I could have touched them, as we were set up on the Old Stuart Highway just after Newcastle Creek. We decided it would be best to move, as if they had returned fully loaded, it would have been dangerous for them to pass us. Sir Charles Todd Memorial Rest Area is a free overnight rest stop on the Stuart Highway in Burdham. The memorial is situated where the north and south sections of the Overland Telegraph Line were joined. We stopped for fuel in Dunmara, not quite halfway between Tennant Creek and Katherine. In 1861, Stuart attempted to make his way through the thick Bull Waddy and Lancewood scrub that surrounded Dunmara, opening the way for the Territory's main lifeline to the south, the Overland Telegraph Line, that was constructed 10 years later. After Stuart came through, early pastoralists with their flocks of stock followed. Ralph Milner brought sheep to the parties working on the telegraph line in 1870-71. Whilst country in the vicinity was not immediately taken up because of the dense Lancewood belt, one of the pioneers to make his homestead in the area was John McCarthy at Milner's Lagoon Station, later to be renamed Dunmara after a waterhole in the vicinity. Our next stop was at Daly Waters, a couple of kilometres off the Stuart Highway. The name Daly Waters was given to a series of natural springs by John McDowell Stuart during his third attempt to cross Australia from south to north in 1861-62. The town was established around the Daly Waters depot, which later became the telegraph station early in 1872. Its importance for droving was cemented with the discovery of the waterholes. It wasn't until 1927 when the town was surveyed, following the extension of the railway line to Burdham, with the town site proclaimed in 1952. Daly Waters also has a rich and interesting aviation history, being the centre for the London to Sydney Air Race in 1926, a World War II Air Force base, and a refuelling stop for Qantas, so we headed there first. The airstrip also has the distinction of being Australia's first international airfield. For almost 30 years, from the 1930s to the late 1950s, it was used for flying mail into the Northern Territory from Queensland. It then became a staging and refuelling point for Qantas international flights flying through Darwin and on to Singapore and other domestic flight services. By the beginning of World War II, military air traffic had replaced civilian air traffic. Although the aerodrome was closed to commercial traffic in 1965, the original Qantas hangar still stands, housing interesting facts, photos and equipment. The complex contains the oldest hangar in the Northern Territory, which was transported along with the oil store to Daly Waters in 1930 and erected in its present position. The historic pub was licensed in 1938 to service passengers and crew from the nearby airfield. On the way back we passed the Flying Fox that once played a significant link for both transportation and communication between the aerodrome and the town, prior to the construction of the bridge over the creek in 1946. Our next stop was at Stuart Tree. During a brief stop in Stuart's expedition to cross the continent from south to north, an S was carved into a tree. Stuart and his party then continued on. For many years the tree was part of the nearby telegraph station, but its significance wasn't fully recognised until the influx of military personnel in the early years of the Second World War, when it was recognised in photographs taken by servicemen. The Overland Telegraph Line reached Daly Waters from the north in June 1872, and for 2 months a pony express carried messages the 421 kilometres south to Tennant Creek via Renner Springs, as the end of the wire from Adelaide had only reached Tennant Creek at this stage. In May 1872, Charles Todd sent a message from Darwin to Elsie Station, then asked a rider to take the message to Tennant Creek for transmission to Adelaide, making it the first transcontinental message to be created, arriving about 1 month after Todd had sent it. Once the line was constructed to Daly waters, a gap still existed between the two sections, and a pony express continued to bridge the gap, still with a delay of about a week, until August 1872, when the wires were joined. We parked Gidget behind Stuart Street before walking into the centre of town. On the corner was Tim's junkyard, full of old cars, bikes and random items from 30 years plus of collecting. Opposite Tim's junkyard was the Daly Waters pub, one of the oldest buildings and one of the most famous watering holes in the territory. Built in 1930, the quirky pub is clad in corrugated iron and crammed with decades of memorabilia, with the building decorated throughout with banknotes and other stuff left by visitors from every corner of the globe. Rick and I spent time at the bull catcher, used to catch feral cattle that had evaded muster for years and were then wild and dangerous, reminiscing about those early days of eradicating brucellosis and tuberculosis in the entire cattle population of both domestic and wild animals that started in 1970. Throwing cattle was the alternative when bull catchers were not available. The program required every beast to be assessed and every animal tested, and the lack of boundary fences on many properties in extensive northern Australia only added to the challenge. The town was crucial for drovers moving large mobs of cattle from Queensland and making their way along the difficult Murrumbidgee stock route into Western Australia, as it was the last watering hole before the perilous leg, and also served as an early supply point for drovers. The historic pub originally started as a drover's store in the 1920s. The Jurek brothers used Daly Waters as a landmark during their historic drive from Queensland to the West Australian coast. In 1879 they left the Lungra station on Cooper Creek with 7,250 breeding cattle and 200 horses, heading for the Kimberley region. The 4,800 kilometre journey of cattle to stock Argyle Downs and Ivanhoe Station is the longest of its type ever recorded. The countryside was looking very lush, and the vegetation was forever changing. Primarily open woodlands and grasslands of hammock grass and spinifex, with eucalypt species like woolly butt and stringy bark. Near waterways and in areas where more moisture lay, there was cane grass and tall pea bushes, sure signs of those early rains. In places we saw where there would be a need to reduce the fuel load, including those created by exotic tussock grasses like mission and gamba grasses in paddocks and along the highway. After spending much of the morning wandering around Daly Waters, we continued north towards Larimer. Further up the highway we passed the very overgrown Alexander Forrest Memorial, with the pyramid-shaped concrete base and an Oppenheimer telegraph pole acting as a central post. The memorial highlights the fact that Forrest and his party reached the overland telegraph line near the spot in 1879, after making an epic journey from De Grey on the West Australian coast. It amazes me the amount of World War II history there is in the top end of Australia, with so much that I had never heard of or been told about. The Northern Territory and Darwin in particular were core to Australia's offensive and defensive roles during World War II, with many significant sites remaining today. Larimer, that came into being in 1940, serving as a crucial military hub, with the town's location and infrastructure becoming an army transit camp, with the construction of the nearby Gorrie airfield, which was a major airfield servicing the war effort, and becoming the site of the railhead and shunting yards. After the demise of the township of Birdham, Larimer remained a busy rail and road terminus until the railway closed in 1976. A huge pink panther and a 15-foot stubby can be found outside the Larimer pub that was originally the World War II officers' mess. From Larrimah we then continued on to Mataranka, renowned for its sandy bottom, thermal pools and pastoral history. You guessed it, we were more interested in the pastoral, railway and World War II history of the town rather than the hot pools. The town is located near Roper River and Mataranka Hot Springs and was first gazetted in May 1928 after the arrival of the North Australian Railway. The area was made famous by the novel We of the Never Never, a book written about nearby Elsie Station by Jeannie Gunn. The homestead was built in 1902, which she shared with her husband Aeneas Gunn until his death, has been reconstructed near to the hot springs. Rick and I had visited the homestead in 1997, and had we not had Gidget in tow, we would have checked out the homestead again. Near Mataranka, the Australian Army set up No. 42 Australian Camp Hospital, while the 10th Australian Advanced Ordnance Workshops camped in buildings made from paper bark trees and serviced wrecked and damaged vehicles in the area. An ammunitions depot was also in the locality. These depots were serviced by railway sidings off the main line. Mataranka was serviced by the original narrow-gauged railway that closed in 1976 after cyclone damage, with the new standard gauge railway opened in 2003, but passes about 20 kilometres west of the town. As we made our way closer to Katherine, we passed where reduction burning was happening, making the termite mounds more visible. The termite mounds, the ultimate sustainable climate control system, always intrigues me for the different colours I see that reflect the type of country they are built on, with some areas having hundreds of them, while others the odd one every now and then. They occur naturally throughout Australia and are made of clay, soil and other natural materials bound together with the saliva from the termites. Some species here in the north even align their mounds with its main axis running north and south. The slab-like mounds are found in low-lying grassland areas that flood during the rainy season and are often widely scattered, but may be grouped together in a graveyard-like manner. Katherine is often called the crossroads of the north, as it is located at the junction of the Stuart and Victoria highways and serves as a central hub for the large area. It is known for its blend of outback and tropical environments. The town was named after the Katherine River by explorer John McDowell Stuart in 1862. The town has had several locations since those early days. The original crossing of the Katherine River at Knott's Crossing, made famous in Jeannie Gunn's novel We of the Never Never, with the Overland Telegraph and original post office situated above Knott's Crossing, adjacent to the Sportsman's Arm Hotel. It had an overland telegraph quarters and a single-room police station. With the completion of the railway bridge in 1926, the present site of Katherine on the southeastern side of the river was gazetted in July 1926. The new area was presumed to be less flood-prone. Situated on the banks of the beautiful Katherine River, the town has a history of flooding and suffered a flood in March 1957 and flooding of the main street in 1974. Then the 1998 Australia Day flood devastated the town and Katherine was declared a national disaster, with Cyclone Les producing between 300 and 400 millimetres of rainfall during a 48-hour period, resulting in the Katherine River rising to 21.3 metres, causing the evacuation of two-thirds of the community and major devastation to the business community. Rick and I will leave you here as we make camp just outside of Katherine. Join us next time as we enjoy a cruise up Katherine Gorge. I hope you have enjoyed our journey north from Newcastle waters. Give us a thumbs up if you have. Stay safe and enjoy life. Cheers for now. Rick and Rosemary. R&R, Live and Life.